How's it going, San Antonio Mafia? My name's Tom Petrini. I'm here with John Elizondo, who has been in Vegas this whole week with Team USA, Greg Popovich, and Derrick White. How you doing, John?
I'm doing good, Tom.
So, a week in Vegas, that's on its face, a fun endeavor. But I know you were pretty busy over there. Um, I want to start with Derrick White because at the start of camp, Pop in an interview was like, "Oh, it's a great opportunity for him to play against these players." Then it comes out in Windhorst reporting that the select team that he was on crushed Team USA a couple days ago. And then again, he was one of the best players. You actually took a video of Jeff Van Gundy talking about him, and he said he was the best player on the floor for either team. Let's take a look.
His confidence level has grown, I think, because of his success this year. He absolutely knows he belongs. And, it just shows. Like, yesterday, without question, he was the best player on the floor for either team. And today, he was really good again.
All right, so the best player for either team, including Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox, these are established names and really rising stars in this league. So is it seriously possible that Derrick White is one of the best players in this group?
And you forgot to mention Kemba Walker as well.
Kemba, yeah.
The only all NBA player that's there in Vegas. The first day, that first practice that he really dominated, we got to go in there. But when we went in there into the open practice, it was probably the last, 3 minutes or so, and he was on the bench. So we didn't really have an idea of how much he had been playing. We heard that, yeah, obviously the select team kicked their butt on Tuesday. Jared Colangelo told me that. He said he wasn't really happy with the national team, but it was a lot of potential with that select team players. We didn't know exactly who stood out, but until Van Gundy told us it was really Derrick, who was really above everybody. We noticed that on Wednesday. We had a lot more time to see them on Wednesday. Derrick came in off the bench. Well, when we came in, he was on the bench, and he came off the bench, and he was fantastic. I mean, he looked like the Derrick White we had seen, put up monster numbers against Denver in the playoff series. And I think that's the one thing that's, I guess, most Spurs fans would be happy to see, is that it's consistency. I mean, I think that was the biggest knock on Derrick White a little bit last season. Not necessarily he wasn't consistent, but when he has like the game he did with 30-plus points against Denver, can he do that every night? Can he do that, 2 out of 3 nights? And he kind of showed that. I mean, he offensively, we didn't see much defensively because, as you can kind of imagine, those kind of games are a little bit more, they're looser. They don't really, not say that defense isn't important, but they don't really go as hard as they do offensively. But offensively, I mean, he was in attack mode constantly. He was the main point guard out there for that group. I forgot exactly who that group was in, but he was the ball handler for them. And he was looking to attack every time and attack the rim. And the thing that impressed me was that it was attacking the rim, but it wasn't necessarily looking to score. It was attacking the rim to draw on the big guys so he could dump it down to a Jaren Jackson Jr. or a Jonathan Isaac and get them an easy bucket. His vision was incredible. And watching that was that it was always constantly looking to pass. He wasn't looking to score. And then when he had his moments, yeah, he was looking to score. But offensively, he looked fantastic. And for the most part, he's being guarded by De'Aaron Fox. And, he was constantly working him. And very impressive, very impressive. And now you can understand why, not necessarily invited with the national team just yet, but at least invited to LA to the second portion of it. And hopefully he'll have a chance to play for Team USA when they go to China.
So what do you think the odds are that he winds up making that 12-man roster and playing in China?
I still think they're slim. I don't think it would still surprise me if he did make that roster. But you never know what happens with injuries and such. I know Marcus Smart is out indefinitely. That's kind of what helped him get to that point where he can go to Los Angeles, because
they Kyle Lowry too, right?
Kyle Lowry's banged up as well. So if a couple more guys get banged up, I think that he has a good shot of sneaking in there. I mean, you already mentioned all those names that are already there. I mean, those are really good players, and it kind of be silly for them to overlook those guys just for how hot Derrick White's been. Now, like I said, unless Derrick White can show that every single day, then yeah, he has a better chance. But I think it's still kind of slim. But overall, this was a great experience for him. I mean, I talked to him for about 8 minutes on Wednesday, and he just couldn't stop talking about how awesome it was to just be around those guys and to get some run with them. I mean, as you know, most of these NBA guys, they go out in the summer and they're playing pickup ball with a bunch of other NBA guys. He was telling me he spent most of his summer out in Denver, playing with some G League guys, some international guys, a couple of the Nuggets. But this kind of stuff is valuable when you have a competition level that goes up a notch, and especially when they're playing with the intensity that they're playing at. Just knowing that this is more of a serious thing. This isn't an all-star game. This isn't just pickup basketball. They're actually training for world competition, so they're taking it seriously. So I mean, he was excited for it. I asked him about talking to Pop about it. He said Pop was the one who gave him the call to tell him that he was on the select team. Said he encouraged him to do it. Said even if he didn't encourage him to do it, he was going to go anyway because it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and he couldn't pass something like that up. I also brought up to him, I thought it was kind of interesting that, a year ago he was in Vegas with the Summer League, and now he's in Vegas, with a monster step and helping out Team USA, because I never really thought about it that way, but it's pretty cool when you think about how much he's grown. And Van Gundy, the reason why Van Gundy said all that was because he's already seen Derrick White. Last fall, I think Derrick was like on a U21 team or something like that. It wasn't a select team, but it was a different Team USA basketball team that Van Gundy had coached, and he had seen Derrick, and that's why he mentioned, his confidence. He knows the confidence level is through the roof compared to where he was a year ago. And that's what happens when you get an entire year of no DeJounte Murray, and you're forced into the fire, and he responded well to that, and it looks like it's helped him out in his progression and kind of maybe get that thing going a lot faster, his rise, as opposed to having to sit behind DeJounte for an entire year.
It's pretty incredible, like you said, the growth in just a year. I mean, this is a guy who won a G League championship, was that a year ago?
Mm-hmm.
And now he's getting a decent crack at Team USA. And obviously, one of the reasons that a guy like Derrick White is getting an opportunity on Team USA is because 30 of their top 35 picks said, I'm good. But still, to have the opportunity to play against these guys, none of the players on this team, there's no slouches out there.
Yeah.
It's not an all-star team, but they would make the playoffs in the NBA for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
all these guys are starters in the NBA. I mean,
right.
none of them are really bench guys. I mean, there's maybe one or few, but most of these guys are starting in the NBA. So they're starting for, one of 30 teams, and that's a select group of guys that are out there. And so, it's incredible what he's doing against them. And the thing is that we talked about this opportunity now, but who knows what he does this year? And if he takes another leap this year, I was talking to Colangelo, and he's saying how they take they value equity with these guys who come out, and spend their time in their off season to work with Team USA. And the fact that he's out there and he already has his face out there, he's making a name for himself, he's turning heads, they might consider him for an Olympic team maybe next year, when, who knows what guys want to show up. But if guys are falling out, or even if there's guys that aren't falling out, they could say, hey, well, this guy's been part of the program. He knows Pop really well. He's one of the top tier, point guards in the league. Then maybe we'll give him a shot at Team USA for the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo. And that, I mean, that sound crazy to say probably a year ago, but now, I mean, it seems like a remote possibility if he continues going in the path he's going. Maybe not now, but a year from now, depending on how he is, I think he might have a shot or get invited at least.
Now, one thing, I've talked to Derrick a couple of times. He's always, super down to earth, and he's I don't know if you've noticed, he's kind of a quiet guy, but he always looks like he's having a good time. He always kind of has this aw shucks smile on his face. And one of the things I talked to him about was specifically his defense. This is a guy who, coming out of high school, was like my height, and then got that extra 6 inches or so that you need to make it at the next level. And he's out there guarding everybody from Kyrie Irving to Luka Doncic. And so I asked him about how coming through his path to the NBA, through a culinary college and transferring, and how that impacts his matchups with these guys. And he said, I feel like I'm an underdog every time I step out there. And do you think that's kind of what was propelling him at this camp? That was like, he had more to prove than anybody else there?
Yeah, a little bit. At the same time, Derrick doesn't really show too much of using a chip on his shoulder. I guess maybe that's just how he is. But he, yeah, I mean, he was very overwhelmed to think that he was one of those, 30 plus guys that were in Vegas this week. I mean, not that he said he didn't feel like he didn't belong there, but I mean, when you mention the names that are there, it's like, and then you include Derrick White, it's like, wow. And I think he felt kind of the same way. And, I had asked him, I said, what is this experience like in the sense of, is it a job? Is it, stress? What is it? He's like, it's just basketball. It's fun. Because you always have fun when you're playing basketball, and I get to play basketball, and I'm just having a lot of fun. And so, you add I think it's more so not the pressure. He doesn't have any pressure on him. It's just out there to just play, and he's just out there having fun. And you add that with just kind of the opportunity, and on top of all the the confidence he has now as a player and what he can do and his skill set. It's proven to be very positive for him and working out really well for him in Vegas right now, and hopefully some more opportunities down the road.
Now, as far as his skill set goes, I said this to start last season. He had definitely had some struggles as starting out getting integrated, but it was very clear from the jump that this guy has a complete set of skills for the NBA, for an NBA player. I mean, he can guard multiple positions. He can do a little bit of everything with and without the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about your thoughts on if he had one thing to really work on, but I think the most obvious is just getting more consistent with the 3-point shot. And if he does that, what do you think his ceiling is as an NBA player?
I think if he gets a 3-point shot, I think his ceiling could be, potential all-star. If that allows. Thing that I'm very curious about is just the dynamic this year with all the guys that are coming back and how he can fit in all that and how they fit everybody else in. Because with the injuries that started off last season, he kind of had. I mean, obviously he had his injury as well, but he had the time and the growth to be able to do that kind of stuff. And now when you bring back DeJounte Murray, which I don't know what percentage DeJounte's at in reality compared to what he might say. It wouldn't surprise me if Derrick's back to old Derrick at the start of the season and they kind of slowly bring in DeJounte, but depending on how DeJounte plays, what is he going to do? But yeah, no, I mean, it's the 3-point shot obviously is a big deal now. And I think that's something that they're emphasizing over there with Spurs and just the way that they're playing the game now, and the way they see everybody else playing the game. I mean, you have to have a 3-point shot. But I think you're right. Defensively, I think is where he's going to be. He's going to spend most of his time on the court. If he's still their best defensive player on the perimeter, which he was last year, that's what's going to get him the minutes. That's what's going to make him a starter long term for the Spurs next season. And that's what the rookies are starting to figure out. That's what they figured out in summer leagues. And Lonnie has figured out it's all about the defense when it comes to those guys. And I know after last season, and especially after the moves they made and the moves they tried to make with Marcus Morris, defense is obviously the biggest thing that they're worried about this season with the Spurs.
And I think they've done a good job addressing that, right? If you think about the personnel, especially that they started last year with, where they went from having defense that you could switch almost everything on the perimeter to defense where you couldn't switch anything or you were toast. And it's personnel. Not only are they getting DeJounte Murray back, Lonnie Walker is going to have a bigger role, and Lonnie is a very solid defender. And especially at the NBA level, when he's not relied upon to create as much of the offense, he'll definitely be able to lock in a little bit more defensively. And then they bring in DeMar Carroll. Keldon Johnson, I think, is the rookie most likely to crack the rotation because of his perimeter defense. So it's going to be a very different looking Spurs team than the one that we saw last year, even though they're really kind of just running it back.
Yeah.
What do you think the realistic expectation is for this team heading into this season?
I think realistically, I think they potentially should be, they could be, or they should be at least the 4 or 5 range in the West. And you think about it, they've been running it back essentially for the last 2 years, because they barely make the playoffs without Kawhi, and that was a shell of itself of a team. That was DeJounte Murray having to grow up really quickly because LaMarcus was the only guy.
Right.
The following year, they bring in DeMar, and so they're kind of had same sort of core minus a new all-star. They win one more game than they did a year ago. They probably shouldn't have been the 7th seed. They should have been a little bit higher, but they lost a couple of games they shouldn't have during the season. But they were still kind of in that range to get 6 or 5. And now I think, especially with all the changes that have happened in the West, and you're noticing it now with the people, the one team that I've been kind of surprised that's getting a lot of buzz, and it doesn't surprise me too much, but it's like Utah. And big reason why is because they have, chemistry, they have continuity. And I mean, that's valued in this league. I mean, the Clippers aren't going to be the Clippers that everyone's going to expect them to be until the end of the season. And this is where the Spurs will, I guess will kind of be better than most teams because they already have this continuity with all these guys that are on this team and how they play with each other. I mean, they're obviously putting in some new guys here and there, but the continuity is going to be a big thing for them and how they start off and how they finish. And I think how they finished, they know that they were, 1, better than a 7 seed, and 2, they were good enough to possibly make the conference finals last year, just the way that the West broke down. I mean, they beat Denver, or they take care of Denver, then you get Portland, and who knows how they do against Portland. And I'm sure they don't do, worse against Portland than Denver did. They went 7 games. So, they have a shot there. I do think that health will be probably the biggest thing. I don't think that they are obviously a championship contender, but I do think that they are a team that could obviously make it to another round in the West and probably either be a 4 or 5 seed if they play as well as they should.
It's an interesting point you make, and I think it's important, especially at the beginning of the season, right? As all of these other teams are still figuring the chemistry out because you're absolutely right. The league essentially got raised. And every team is in the West is dealing with really new pieces that have never played together before or haven't played together since they both became, MVP candidate type point guards. There are a lot of teams dealing with a lot of turnover, and the Spurs are really just getting guys back. So it's definitely exciting to see. And I think, as wide open as the West is going to be, as wide open as the whole league is going to be, I'm sure the guys in that locker room, DeJounte Murray, an incredibly competitive guy. I know he thinks that they have a shot this year. I know that he's not alone in that locker room. And so it's going to be really fun to watch this team kind of, after getting some tough breaks for the past 2 years, I think this year they're finally going to have an opportunity to really prove what they can do.
And you think about it, I mean, how many games did they win last year? 46, right? Something around there?
Yeah, at 46, 48, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And that was with a team that started off with 8 brand new guys. And it was pretty much a fresh start. It was the first time, I think, since 93 or 94 that the Spurs had 8 brand new players on the team. I mean, this is a franchise that is, relied on continuity for decades, and they didn't have that last year, and now they have it this year. And you got guys who know the system, and even the guys who were out last year, they know the system. DeJounte, Lonnie, they now know the system. So, yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest benefit they're going to have this year, and hopefully – winning early and then winning some of those close games they should have last season. and closing out some of those games they should have. I mean, I think about that Bulls game that they blew.
Absolutely. Yeah, we saw our fair share of games that they just let go of the rope. Um, and I did want to ask you about Greg Popovich, obviously coach of Team USA. Um, is this the most media that he's been around really since the 2014 finals? Like it seems like he's just mobbed there in a way that he's really not in San Antonio.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I noticed a little bit more last year. I mean, I think I won't say he's soft, but he's softened up a little bit. He's still same Pop. I got popped a couple times at some questions I asked him. But he definitely, I mean, he's having to deal with a lot more media, a lot more international media, obviously, because there's people who want to know. We had some journalists from China and stuff coming in to talk to him. But no, I mean, you could just tell he's very happy. I mean, I can't read him that well, but I can tell that he's happy and he wants to be there just based off of the people I've talked to. I mean, Steve Kerr mentioned how well prepared he was just to come in, that he was very amazed about all the preparation Pop had already gone through leading up to that training camp, what they wanted to do and how they were going to do things. I talked to Ime Udoka a little bit about it and said, Pop mentioned to me or told me that, his focus right now is on the Team USA. He doesn't care about the Spurs. Well, I said, well, how often had he been focused about Team USA basketball during the course of Spurs season? He goes, oh, it wasn't just last season. He goes, it's been going on for like 3 years now. I mean, he's been spending a lot of time focused on Team USA stuff when he's not, obviously having focus on the Spurs. So this means a great deal to him, and for several reasons. I mean, I'm sure, obviously, his military background, you get a different feeling when you have the USA on your chest. But I mean, his history with USA basketball hasn't been that great. I mean, he got left off the '72 team from Bob Knight, the team that ended up losing to the Russians, the Soviets in the Olympics. He was on that coaching staff of the disastrous '04 team. So I feel like this is, for him, this third time. And then he gets left off by Team USA when they bring in Krzyzewski for the Redeem team. I mean, he was probably the most qualified pro coach out there, and they end up going with Krzyzewski. So I think he's just had so much heartbreak that, now that this is his opportunity, he doesn't want to screw it up, and he wants it to be the best, opportunity he can have doing it. And who knows how many years he would do it. Who knows if this might be a 1 year or, one Olympic thing, or maybe he might stick around for 2 Olympics, depending on how he feels. But I know that this is a opportunity that he is going to seize more than anybody else out there, whether they're a player or a coach, because it means that much to him.
And you mentioned '72. They should have took him because he can speak Russian. He would have been able to help them. Even if he didn't get a single bucket, he would have been like, oh, they're going. They said to go under the pick and rolls. Whatever. He would have been their counterintelligence guy. So yeah, big screw up on their part. But that Windhorst article the other day, it was really great because it was like, why is Greg Popovich doing this? And basically it came down to, you do it for your country. Like this is a tremendous honor. And, Pop is his background in the military, his outspokenness. He embodies a lot of what being an American is all about. And, part of being around so much national media, especially because he's been so outspoken, you knew somebody was going to ask about the mass shootings. And, he was more reserved than he's been in the past. But basically, he told lawmakers to get off their ass and do something, Yeah. Enjoy your vacation. You'll fix it all when you get back. What has the conversation been around the camp about that sort of thing with, head coach of Team USA in his Team USA shirt calling out elected leaders?
Not so much as going into it. I think that was the thing that we were always very curious about because, you see it all the time when he's with the Spurs. We've asked him questions about, things like that and real life situations going on in the world. A lot of times, and he's very, very candid with his response and doesn't hold back. And I think you've noticed it, and we noticed it too, is just how much he was going to have to be pulled back a little bit on it. And he understands who he's working for. I mean, he understands that, he's allowed to be critical, but, he has to make sure that he's aware of how he's critical and what he's critical about, because, he is representing the United States. He's not representing a small portion of it. He's representing the entire United States. So, I think when it comes to his answers, especially now, I think he views it as his answers come from common sense and not necessarily a very political motivation for it. As you mentioned, I mean, he asked about gun violence. He didn't talk about gun control. He just said that people need to do something about it. I mean, that plain and simple. He's going to keep it as vanilla as possible, but, in the most pop way of trying to make sure that, his message is heard.
Right. And, he's a guy who has been really hasn't cared too much about what other people think about what he has to say when it comes to this stuff. So, I think he definitely doesn't want to be super inflammatory, but he definitely wants to use his platform to talk about things that are important. And like you said, I think for him, it's not super political. And he said that pretty much after the election. He was like, it's not because the Democrats lost the election, it's because some things shouldn't be political, like white supremacy, like that shouldn't be like, a pick sides thing.
Yeah. And that was the thing he had also mentioned too, is just about, he understands that being the coach of Team USA, there's a lot more to it. And he talked about, that there's divisiveness in this country, and that, he hopes that this is just maybe an example of what this country could be when people come together and do something great. And I forgot who was it that mentioned, I wasn't there. I think it was Steve Kerr had mentioned that something about the Women's World Cup team. I mean, you see like what they can do. It's just about unity, and that's what sports is all about. Sports is about unity, about coming together, and especially when you have a international competition. I mean, it's the one thing that everybody can agree upon, that you're going to cheer for the USA and you're going to cheer for the red, white, and blue. And he wants these guys to be representative of that, and to hold, to make something that everyone's proud of, no matter your political leanings. I mean, it's just about getting the ball in the hoop and getting the goal.
Gotcha. And before you leave, your Twitter bio makes me laugh every time I click on your profile. You're not an Emmy award-winning journalist, but your mom thinks you do a pretty good job. Is your mom a sports person, or is what you do pretty much gibberish to her?
No, she is a sports person. I grew up going to Spurs games with her as a kid. My dad worked for the NBA for several years, and so he never went to a game with us. I always went to the games with my mom because he was working. My mom is a full sports fan through and through, and she loves her Spurs. She could talk, and she could probably say everything I'm saying right now because she knows it as much as I do. But no, she loves it. She loves what I'm doing, and really, to me, no award in the world would matter to me other than the approval from my parents. So they're happy. They love seeing me on TV, especially back home now, and that's all that matters to me. So I'm pretty happy whenever I get a text from them that tells me I did a good job.
Well, that's awesome, man. You are doing great work. I really loved keeping in touch with the team through your coverage at Team USA. What are you working on next? What's in the pipeline for you?
Well, we got till Spurs pick up again in late September. It is hot outside and it's August, so that only means one thing: it is football season in Texas. So we got a high school football season that is quickly approaching. So I've been constantly on the phones getting things ready for our high school football coverage this year. So season starts at the end of the month, and then pretty much don't come up for air until January, get a little break, and then when playoffs come around for the Spurs, that playoff stretch around late March to April, then it's back into constant work mode with the Spurs. Good work, but always busy and always fun covering the Spurs when they start making the playoff runs.
Absolutely. Well, enjoy as much of the summer as you can. Stay cool, and we'll be in touch. I can't wait to talk to you again when things pick up.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, Tom.
He's John Elizondo. I'm Tom Petrini. Go Spurs, go.